So you've defeated Searing Exarch and the Eater of Worlds. Now what? Step 1, farm dungeon. Just kidding, we are not farming dungeon, hopefully. We have 2 Void Stones and we want 2 more. To get them, we'll have to defeat Maven and Uber Elder. And to do that, we need to farm their boss fragments and upgrade our character. But in what order? And how exactly? And which items? How much damage? Which implicits? Why no artillery ballista? Leaguestart viable? Bandits? What should I eat for breakfast? Hold up, wait a minute. Let's take it step by step with the character's progression broken down into 3 parts. Part 1, on a 5 link with minimal changes, can you rush Maven and get the 3rd Void Stone? Part 2, if you farmed a 6 link and crafted some efficient pieces during the process, how powerful could you get? And in Part 3, if we won the Uber Elder lottery, we'll walk straight in, otherwise we'll upgrade our character even further while gambling. I mean farming for the last fragment. Like seriously, there's no difference here. Moving on, let's get started with Part 1. If we're rushing Maven with a minimum viable setup, then the name of the game is optimization, and not only gear, but also passive tree and playstyle. The 2 most important variables that impact playstyle are projectile travel distance and cast on crit. Cast on crit, because when combined with Manaforged arrows, enables even more automation. Instead of self-casting Tornado, you can automate it by changing the frenzy setup. But immediately, there are some problems. First, we've lost power charge on crit, which we can fix by 5-linking our bow. But secondly, Tornado spawns from our character, meaning it spends the majority of its duration traveling to the boss doing no damage before expiring. Now the easy solution is to just play point blank. However, if you look at this graph showcasing damage multiplier versus projectile travel distance, with Farshot we want to attack our target at 70 units or more, which is approximately near the edge of the screen. Yet to add an additional complication when observing our Stormrain Manaforged setup during boss fights, when too far away or perhaps not name locking, the Stormrain projectiles will land on our own character, dealing no damage. Again, another reason to just play point blank. But the consideration is, what do we value more? The damage from our Lightning Arrow Barrage, or the additional damage from our Manaforged skills? I don't believe there's a right answer, but I do believe there's an argument to use Stormrain as an additional utility skill when attacking from afar, and prioritizing its damage when using a close-range playstyle. With playstyle out of the way, let's wrap up our character setup with passive tree and gear. Starting with flasks. On many characters, utility flasks are considered temporary buffs and cannot be factored into your theoretical stats. However, with the percent chance to gain a flask charge when you deal a critical strike modifier, it's quite reasonable to have 100% uptime on a flask or 2. It's mandatory to note that this modifier has a global cooldown of 100 milliseconds, so it cannot proc more than 10 times a second. But with a flask belt or passive tree nodes such as Careful Conservationist or Natural Remedies, it's not a problem. In this run, I rolled a Silver Flask and a Diamond Flask with the mod, and ideally I would hit attack speed and critical strike chance for suffixes. But defensive modifiers such as Reduced Effective Chill or Shock can also be quite useful. To finalize gear, we need to talk about Betrayal. We can save 3 skill points by removing piercing shots and crafting +1 pierce on either our gloves and or helmet. It's common on Veil, so it's quite reasonable to get. Next are the physical damage from hits taken as elemental damage in Veils. They may require some luck to get, but will add some noticeable survivability versus physical damage if you get them. Paralysis taken as fire can be crafted on helmets, and Gravitius's Dual Fist taken as fire and lightning can be crafted on chests. If you are really lucky, you'll move Hillock to research to quality up your charge and crit flasks, which in combination with a flask belt, may allow you to save some passive points on the tree. Speaking of passive points, these are the changes I made to min-max the character. And I also flipped these gems. With all these changes and optimizations, we're now on the path for approximately 2.2 million Lightning Arrow Barrage DPS. A hefty upgrade from our 1.3 million versus Eater Exarch. We just need to play the game now, gain experience, and progress to Maven. But how exactly will we progress to Maven? Well, don't try this at home, but I did it with 10 ways. Seriously, you normally shouldn't do this, but I wanted to test destructive play in combination with remnants of the past. First things first, we want more Atlas points, so we continue with Wandering Path and talk to our friend Kirak. Kirak's scouting reports, Kirak's shop, and Kirak missions are a great way to round out the last couple points. You'll also commonly find corrupted maps or even unique maps like this Malkun. Quick and easy adventure, 2 minutes max. 20 minutes later. Yo! Where the is Fairgraves? Once you have enough points, you can switch our Atlas to something like this. Lots of shaping nodes to help with sustain, destructive play and remnants of the past of course, and any other league mechanic of your choosing, which for me were shrines, essences, and delirium. Delirium, since if you get a certain cluster, it might be really impactful in part 2. You can also take these betrayal nodes in the bottom right to help find your veils faster. So how good was Destructive Play, Remnants of the Past, and 10 Ways? Well, it wasn't too bad, because map sustain was a non-issue, which made pre-rolling maps and boss rushing viable. I also had a couple Awakened Gem drops, which is kind of cool. Nonetheless, there were two main issues. First, timed up the stakes takes some time to cast, so you generally have to wait a moment when encountering a map boss. And secondly, Maven could also summon some pretty nasty bosses, which for my character in this run was basically any super high physical damage boss.
Obliteration!
The 10 ways themselves were fairly straightforward, but did take an average of 1 minute and 20 seconds per fight at 2 million DPS, which isn't the greatest. I also couldn't roll them too hard, so in 8 invites I found 10 splinters, 1 Elder map, 1 Shaper map, and 5 Conqueror maps. And also this heavy belt. Just kidding, never lucky. Time for Maven. The fight itself was fairly fast, beating the first phase in 32 seconds and taking around 6 minutes for the whole fight. It was also deathless.
I'm not the prettiest peacemakers.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I died to the memory game. Honestly, the most challenging part of the fight. So challenging, the community even made an app so you can practice it beforehand. Anyways, I was quite pleased to confirm that yes, you can progress to the 3rd Void Stone on essentially an Eater Exarch level of gear. Would I recommend it though? If you don't want to farm your 6-link dungeon, then yeah, sure. But for most playthroughs, it's probably more efficient to upgrade our character first and progress with harder invitations after. Now for part 2, upgrading gear will be mandatory, but to round out the build, I believe you have a choice between clusters, character levels, or both. I'll be testing clusters to start, particularly because of this notable on lightning large cluster jewels. Snowstorm adds 8% of lightning damage as extra cold damage against chilled enemies, which in theory should help with Trinity uptime and allows us to switch anger for wrath. However, rolling the jewel itself can be challenging, and if you fail to do so, it will cost a lot of skill points. Ideally you want Snowstorm right here, before the jewel socket, but that's not guaranteed. We have 2 options to check where a notable is. Option 1, check POB. Just copy paste the jewel you've crafted into POB and check where it is. Option 2, check PoE DB and go for a 3 notable jewel. The node you want cannot be in the middle. It should either be first or last. So Snowstorm and any 2 notables above or below will give us a cluster with Snowstorm before the jewel socket. In addition to clusters, we're really looking to add more critical strike multiplier to our character. New Amulet, Quiver, Viridian Jewels, and Eldritch Implicits are the best sources. Rings are also really good, but take time to craft. Spell damage and upcoming T16 Delirium content can be dangerous, so now is a great time to cap spell suppression. Inveterate, Quickstep, Intuition, or crafting upgrades with evasion bases are all great choices. To get a 6-link, I chose to farm the Chains That Bind in Cage and Cells. I switched my atlas from part 1 to roughly something like this. The goal was to add some juice to help farm cards faster, and add as many unique monsters as possible. Make use of Paranoid Fixation's chance to drop an additional cluster jewel. Thus, I experimented with Exiles, Metamorph, and Ghosts. So how did the farming go? Well, let's turn to the first set. Evasion based, not bad. Time to craft. This has Life, which removes the mastery, has OK suffixes, doesn't have suppression, but does have an open prefix which could be useful if we unveil a Gravicious craft. Amulet, first try. Quiver, this didn't go so well. I ended up burning pretty much all my essences here. I was quite surprised I couldn't make one with crit multi better than this. For the Viridian Jewel, my goal here was to alt-regal a 2 damage mod jewel, aiming for attack speed and critical strike multiplier. But I actually got pretty lucky here and found a 3 damage mod jewel. And this luck continued with the medium cluster jewel, hitting the ideal mods with some chaos orbs. But my luck quickly ran out with a large cluster. First, I'd only found a 12 passive lightning large, and after spending tons of alterations, scours, elks, and chaos, I had to settle for this, the snowstorm ending up in the worst possible location. So naturally, I would have to cut some corners. Spell suppression? Don't need that. 500 less health pool? Yeah, sure, it will be fine. But hey, at least I have all this damage. Time to boss. Okay, that was pretty lucky. Hit both the 50/50s. Time for Uber Elder. Deathless for sure.
Putrefy, rot, spoil, and fester.
Exile, do something! My mana is gone.
It's fine. Only 1 death. It's fine. Only 2 deaths. First try, deathless, and we even got a Watcher's Eye. I bet you this thing's insane. CDR is good, right? Okay, let's evaluate. All the damage goals were accomplished and all of the Void Stones were obtained. But I want to do better. I know bow builds are notorious for using 6 portals as a defensive layer. Still, did I have enough damage to justify the deaths? Instead of ending the run here, I decided to push forward, and I felt I had 2 choices. Option 1, get even more damage. Or option 2, don't cut corners and add some defense. Since option 1 is more don't get hit, if we add some defense, maybe we can get hit? Sounds strange, but let's try it. Now to get back into action quickly, I decided to remove my cluster jewels altogether, and craft a new pair of boots, ring and belt. T1 suppression on the boots and Inveterate would cap our suppression. Accuracy on a ring allows us to run a lower level precision, which also means we can switch Arctic Armor for discipline. To regain physical damage mitigation, we craft Corel's Fist Taken as Fire on the helmet, and if I had the Vicious craft, I would also craft it on the chest. This does mean I had to spend 2 skill points for +1 Pierce on the tree, since I couldn't craft it on my gloves, but I was able to craft this very strong Focus Attack Speed modifier instead. Lastly, the belt's purpose was for an open suffix to recraft Betrayal Energy Shield Regeneration modifier, leading to higher uptime of this Energy Shield mastery. So what was the result? I can now tank many high damage, elemental, or physical damage hits that would previously one-shot me. But what did it cost? Well, our damage had dropped from 2.8 million return proj DPS to approximately 2.1 million. Still, I was feeling confident in the changes. Okay, that's pretty lucky. Only 2 Shapers and 3 Elders for Uber Elder round 2. This time, deathless for sure.
Putrefy, rot, spoil, and fester.
Exile, do something!
So after eliminating all these bosses, what is the most effective way to progress after Eater Exarch? You can progress on a 5-link, but I believe farming a 6-link is almost always recommended, especially since a divination card like the Chains That Bind can give evasion, evasion energy shield, or even energy shield bases that are all usable. Clusters are very strong, especially if you can craft them optimally, but crafting multiple optimal jewels takes time. Thus, in a Leaguestart rush context, I would push them down in priority. Also, it's quite arguable that in modern PoE, investing in defense is crucial. Simply so, you can take a hit or 2. Yeah, just don't get hit is valid, but when you're dead, your damage is 0. So next time I do a similar run, I'll forgo clusters altogether, and perhaps look for more interesting ways to add survivability while still maintaining adequate damage in a Leaguestart rush context. Additionally, I want to do more testing with Energy Shield Leech. During this run, I experimented specifically with Energy Shield Spell Leech, obtainable via this node or as a flask suffix. In the past, it proved quite effective as the sole method to stay at full energy shield. Yet, with just Tornado or even Tornado and Hydrosphere, it equated to an inconsistent 10 to 15 energy shield regen per second, worse than a modifier you could get on an Abyss Jewel. An interesting future test would be more experimentation with Energy Shield Leech support, perhaps also in combination with Blood Rage and damage on full life mechanics. Up next are a couple of boss fights and speed farming routes, with various tips subtitled throughout the rest of the video. That concludes the first progression style video series. If you've enjoyed it, you can let me know with a like, subscription, or comment. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a great day, Exiles. Bye!
Putrefy, rot, spoil, and fester.
Exile, do something! My mana is gone. mana is gone.
Another challenger? Struggle with dragon. Repeat my challenge. Gather more combatants. The prize piece comes to join my collection.
My mana is gone.
Stand still. Cascade of pain.
Pain will be returned tenfold. Space aligns. Behold my collection.
I will have what I want. It will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Cascade of pain. Stand still.
Resistance will be punished. Time contorts. Scurry, scurry.
My irritation is growing. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry. Do what I say. Cascade of pain. Stand still.
Death may kneel.
Cascade of pain.
Stop resisting. Reality bends. Punishment inescapable.
Arrogant toy.
My
Death
mana
will
is
not
gone.
be an escape. Scurry, scurry. A cascade of pain. Stand still. Take this. A cascade of pain. Stand still. A cascade of pain. Take this. Death will not be an escape. Scurry, scurry.
toy must enjoy our contests.